So thou, O son of man, I have set thee a watchman unto the house of Israel. Therefore, thou shalt hear the word of my mouth, and warn them from me.
Have no fellowship with the unfruitful works of darkness, but rather expose them.
Coming to you from an undisclosed location in Middle Tennessee and examining current events from a biblical perspective, this is Bible News Radio with your hosts, Randall and Stacy Harp.
Hello, people. How you doing? So, have no fellowship with the unfruitful deeds of darkness, but rather expose them. Yeah, Ephesians 4:11. I love that verse. Hopefully you guys do too, because that's part of what we're supposed to do as Christians. It's kind of the fun part, except that's the part where people go, "You guys are so judgmental. Who are you so judgmental?" Hi, Melanie, my #1 super fan. How are you? And Sylvia. Hi, Sylvia. Pillar of the community. You guys rock. So, everybody, I want to welcome you to the show. I am your sweet and lovable host, contrary to some people's opinion, and probably the devil's opinion. He probably has no... He's not a fan of me, trust me. Anyway, if you are watching this show on the archive, I want to tell you thank you for joining me. Make sure that you follow us on Facebook at Bible News Radio, on Twitter at Bible News Radio, and of course, on YouTube at Bible News Radio. Yes, that's right. I am a person. Yeah, I am. And don't forget, you can go over to my email list and join it, because I write something in it every day, except weekends. Sometimes I do on weekends. But anyway, just go over there, sign up, and if you get sick of me, you can unsubscribe. But you won't, just so you know. You took a day off work since no one else was there. Hashtag snow day. I know, right? Here it is, what, the second day of spring, and half the country has snow? Yeah, it does. I went and played pickleball today, and I was wearing a t-shirt and my little leggings that I always wear, which are like super thin. They're really designed for California, but for some reason I wear them here. Anyway, I had to park the farthest away from the entrance, and I got out, I was walking. By the time I got in, I was frozen. It was so cold. It was so cold. But after one game, I was fine. I was thawed out. Okay, I want to see if anybody's on Facebook yet. And if you are, I want to say hi. If you're not, then I'll just pretend somebody's there and say hi. No, I'm just kidding. I won't. And of course, I have to thank my beloved man, Randall Pandle Bareface, for producing the show. He is really the star of the show. He is...
It's not my real name, just so you know.
Yeah, it is. Now, he is actually the guy that makes us all look good.
Trying to.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, I am.
Yeah, you do. So now you have actually, you've actually adopted my repeat echo language. I don't know what else to call it.
Well, it's kind of like saying,
no, I don't.
Oh man. Just,
I know. Verily, verily, I say unto you.
Yeah, but affirming yourself and your opinions.
Yeah, I do.
Exactly.
Hey, if nobody else will, I may as well, do it myself. What's really funny is now I hear other people doing it.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I do. All right. Okay. So everybody, thank you for coming in. Tonight's show is going to be controversial for some. It's going to be inspirational for other people. It's going to be fun for me because I have a good old friend here, and I emphasize old. Sonny. No, I'm just kidding. Actually, he's a good guy. His name is Stephen Black. He is the executive director of First Stone Ministries, and he is the chairman of the Restored Hope Network, which, is a network of ministries that actually formed after Exodus International went under due to heresy by Alan Chambers and Randy Thomas, who's now actually in a homosexual relationship, I should tell you. But First Stone Ministries is the main ministry that Stephen works with, and if you've been with us before, then you know that he is a man who was delivered from homosexual feelings and behavior, and now actually spends his time ministering to those who want help with their unwanted same-sex attraction. And this is such a hot button issue. And you know what? I gotta say something. I was thinking about this this morning. I was reading in Mark chapter 2. And, you know, Jesus, he called Levi, the tax gatherer. He said, hey, follow me. And Levi got up and said, all right, I'm going to follow you. I don't know. That's anyway, he got up, he arose, he followed Jesus. Next thing you know, Matthew, a.k.a. Levi, and Yeshua, a.k.a. Jesus, are at his house having dinner. And the text actually says that there is a whole bunch of tax gatherers and sinners there, right? And I thought that was cool. Levi was so excited that he decided to invite his buddies at the IRS to come and hang out with the Lord, right? So, but who else showed up? Well, the scribes and Pharisees were there. And so what did they do? Well, of course, because they're the religious folk of the day. They're like, hey, you know, Jesus, what are you hanging out with those tax gatherers and sinners for? And Jesus' answer is very cool. I love Jesus because he says stuff like this that irritates the religious people. He goes, you know, it's basically the sick people that need a physician, not those who are whole, not those who are not sick, you know. And I thought, that's interesting. And then the other thing I thought that was really interesting is that the Pharisees and scribes never said to the tax gatherers, and I was sharing this with Randall this morning, you know, why are you hanging out with Jesus? I'm curious. What is it about this dude that you like so much that you would pick up and leave your career and you go and hang out and actually have a meal with him? And I think that question is not asked often enough. And it made me think about Stephen, actually, and it made me think about me, and it made me think about a whole bunch of other things, because the question nobody ever asks is, why do you follow Christ? What is it about Jesus that has attracted you to him? What has he actually done for you? You know, why are you such a Jesus freak? To put it that way. Well, you know, see, Jesus was interrogated by the religious leaders. He was never, ever, 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 ever interrogated by the normal folk. They just accepted him for who he was. And yet today in the church, we have a theological divide, in part because of religious folk who deny who actually Jesus was, and they deny his power. Hey, if change isn't possible for the homosexual, then is change possible for anything else? I don't know. I don't know, because I think, well, if my God can't change a homosexual's feelings, right, then that's a wimpy God. Right? But I think he can. Well, actually, I don't think. I know he can. And my testimony bears part of that, as well as Stephen's. So, Stephen, welcome to the show. I'm glad you're here.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
I'm glad you're back. And just so you know,
I like being back.
I always have your back, bro. Just so you know.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. So what do you think about that? You know, I was meditating on the word this morning, and that insight came to me. I'd never seen it before. I never thought of it that way before. You know, the religious folk, you know, are always like, well, why are you hanging out with the sinners? But the sinners never, you know, are like being interrogated about why they hang out with Jesus.
Yeah, I love hanging out with Jesus. Jesus has radically transformed my life. What an amazing God we serve. I'm so grateful for what he did in my life 35 years ago. But that's a good question. Why would sinners want to hang out with Jesus? Because he's Messiah and God, and he's life for me, that's for sure. Unfortunately, so many people have never tasted and seen that the Lord is so good. He's so kind. He's so merciful. He's so forgiving. Amazing.
Yeah, he is. He is. And I think that's totally cool. Hey, by the way, I want to say hi to my friend Virginia Proden, who is the author of Saving My Assassin. You have got to read her story. It's awesome. Thanks for joining. Nice to see you there. And Meredith has said hi. I don't know you, but I think she knows you, Stephen. Do you know Meredith Stroud?
I do, I think, yeah.
All right.
I just invited a bunch of people to come watch on Facebook.
Awesome.
So we may have interesting people coming in. Hopefully good people.
It wouldn't be the first time we've had controversy on this show. Just so you know, people. I'm okay with it. Okay, so, all right. So I always ask you this for somebody who may not know who you are exactly. Can you share your testimony a little bit? And then we want to get into some of the recent stuff that you're dealing with because of your book, Freedom Realized,
Sure.
the nerve of
Sure.
you writing that book about your life and stuff.
Yeah. Well, 35 years ago, I had this transformative experience where I was living as a gay man at that time. I had been living as a gay man for 8 years, and my most formative years of development between the ages of 14 and 22. If you were to listen to the world, APA, and psychologists and people like that, they would say someone like me could never change and will always have a quote-unquote sexual orientation that's homosexual. But I had this radical transformative experience where I'd been crying out for about 1.5 years to God as someone who'd been raised in Catholicism in the church. And my little brother had died, and so I was thinking about eternity a lot. And I was in pain and dealing with grief as most people would be in that situation. And the Lord heard me. He heard my cry. And it happened to be that I was with some people that were absolutely on fire for the Lord. I'd been gone out partying with a friend, and we went to her sister's house. And in this little trailer park in Tacoma Park, Oklahoma, I was encountering these people that were talking about Jesus in a way I'd never heard. They talked about him coming and going from their lives, and that Jesus answered their prayer. And I thought, man, these people are crazy, but I want to know Jesus like these people know him. And so it started with that simple prayer, praying with that man. And that night he said, well, you've given your life to the Lord. You're born again. And I was like, wow, I don't know what that really is, but I know I feel this relief. As I was praying, I saw the crucifix, but I saw Jesus alive, and Jesus taking all my sin, and I was amazed by that. And so on the way home that night, this girl that I was with asked me, she goes, well, so does this mean you're not going to be gay anymore? And I said, I guess it means whatever Jesus has for me. Because see, earlier in the night, I was hearing this voice, and this voice said to me, if you do not accept me tonight, you're going to die. And it was like, I need to know Jesus like these people know Jesus. And so when she asked me that question on the way home, I thought, well, I need to find out what the Bible has to say about this. So I got the big Douay version, a big table Bible this thick from the Vatican, and my parents' family table Bible. I lugged that thing down in my room. I prayed over this table Bible, and I said, God, I need to know, is homosexuality okay? Because my parents' priest was telling me, oh, it's all the more reason to come to Mass, wink, wink, as he was trying to seduce me, and telling me that God made me homosexual. And so I wanted to know what God's word said about it. And I did, and I prayed over that. And I'm not kidding you, Stacy, as God is my witness, I took this Bible and I flipped it open. And just like I flipped open this Bible, and it literally fell open to Leviticus chapter 18, and my eyes fell down onto verse 22. And there it was, right there in black and white, a man shall not lie with another man as he does with a woman. This is a detestable, abominable act in the sight of God. And then I noticed that it also said in chapter 20, verse 13, the same thing, except that I was worthy of death. And I remember crying out that night going, God, I don't know how to change, but if you'll change me, I surrender my life to you. And from that day forward, I have never gone back into homosexuality. He broke off the sexual addiction immediately, but I had to work on my stuff. I had to work on my heart. I had to work on my mind and attractions and things. Mm-hmm. But I've never gone back into homosexuality in 35 years. And Jesus really radically saved me. You see, that was in 1983. Do you know in 1983, there was this mysterious disease that summer that started popping up in all the hospitals in Oklahoma City. And the Lord, in his kindness, delivered me, as more than half of the people that I knew within 3 years had died from this mysterious disease that they called back then GRID.
Right.
Gay-related immune deficiency.
That's right.
So I am so in love with the Lord. I'm so grateful, honestly, for his mercy. So many of the people that I knew, they're dead. Mm-hmm. And I've seen a lot of death in my ministry. I've seen a lot of people that I've ministered to die. And I know the mercy of God. And so I want people to know and to experience this mercy that I've received, so that they can know that they don't have to live as an LGBTQ or whatever. They can really be set free. And so that's my story. And that's why I've been in this ministry for over 25 years full time now at First Stone. And, you'll have people out there who says, you're obsessed with this whole gay thing. No, what I'm obsessed with is I'm obsessed with the gospel. I'm obsessed with how much Jesus has forgiven me. I'm obsessed with the mercy of God. And I'm obsessed with the idea that other people can have what I have and be set free. It's called being obsessed with love. I'm obsessed with his love. And I want other people to have it too.
Amen. And amen. And would be, it's my desire is that God would raise up more people like you, honestly. And I know that will get some hate mail from some people, but you know what? It's like I was just sharing, if you know Jesus and the power of his resurrection in your life, you can't not talk about Christ. Just saying. And that's how I know who the Christians really are, because they can't stop talking about those things that they see and they hear, which is exactly what we see in the Gospels. That's exactly what happened with the disciples. That's what happened with the woman at the well. That's what happened to all these people who encountered the love incarnate, because he is, and he's alive, unlike all these other fake religions out there with a dead, religious leader. Christ is living. And I'll tell you what, anybody who doesn't want to believe that, come to me and I'll spend however long you want going through the evidence of the resurrection and the history of the Bible and the persecution of the church and, countless interviews I've done with millions of people. So
that's one reason why I love being on air with you and talking with you. You do love the Lord and you're not afraid, and you are the lovable host. You make the gospel in kindness attractive, Stacy. Women like you are terrific, and I appreciate that about you.
Well, thank you. I started to get a complex though, Stephen. I swear, everywhere I go, most people say I'm so sweet, and I'm like, would you stop it already? but only a handful of people have seen me not be so sweet. But anyway, so okay, let's turn the conversation a little bit to the current attacks that are happening in the field. Now, if you're new to the show, let me tell you a little bit about me, just so you have an idea of my background, so I can share with you my personal experience with this issue. Okay, first of all, I have a master's degree in clinical psychology from Vanguard University of Southern California. I graduated in 2005 with the intent to practice as a marriage and family therapist. I spent 5 years earning 3,000 hours of internship, which I did in colleges and a church, actually, believe it or not, it was a Lutheran church with a gay pastor. I did part of my internship at Christian college and in Costa Mesa Elementary School for 3 years. Okay. When I started studying for the test to get licensed in Southern California, one of the things that came up over and over again in the testing to get licensed in California was the topic of homosexuality. And could I, as a therapist, treat a homosexual? And I remember so distinctly reading it, and I still have my study materials. I spent $600 for them. They're downstairs in my living room, in my bookshelf. They're this thick, and I have 3 books. And I was reading in that the scenarios that I had to study in order to pass the test. And there's 2 tests in California to get licensed, right? There's the oral. Well, that was the oral. They switched it to 2 written tests. And when it came to the topic of homosexuality, I had no option to say homosexuals could change if they wanted to. And I told my husband, I said, I can't do it. I can't do it. They're gagging the gospel. They're gagging the truth. I was actually told in my clinical training that when people come in to see me as a therapist, even if they were deluded in their thinking, it was my job to affirm them. And I'm like, you're out of your crazy mind. That's not the word I want to use. But I was like, no, there's no way. And then I consulted with some of my friends who are my mentors in the field, and they told me that I was making the right decision by not getting licensed because they knew my passion. And at that time, in 2005, I started what I'm doing now, except God's expanded it to something greater. And to make a long story short, I saw this coming way back then. And God's put me here. Since then, I've gone to a GLSEN conference, the Gay, Lesbian, Straight Education Network. I've gone to a SESCAL conference, which is a counseling conference put on by homosexual activists in San Diego. And their whole point in that conference was to convince me as a school therapist to set up my office to be pro-gay and affirming, where I met Chastity Bono, a.k.a. Chaz Bono, and Stuart Milk, the nephew of Harvey Milk. Shaking their hands, spend the weekend with them. I've spent the weekend with gay activists down at the Gay, Lesbian, Straight Education Network. With my husband, we went in as spies. We got the material. I heard firsthand, sadly, how they bash all Christian ministries, Focus on the Family, Concerned Women for America, Family Research Council, you name it. It's on the Southern Poverty Law Center's hate list. I've been inside the belly of the beast. That's what I'm trying to tell you. And then I do this job. I was the social media manager for my friend Dr. Gordon James Klingenschmidt from Pray in Jesus' Name, who's very outspoken about this issue as well. I manned his social media, saw the demonic venom he got from the gay activist community, and I've received it myself, as well as death threats during Prop 8, when Prop 8 was up and everybody and their grandmother was being attacked. I'm just telling you this because I know what I'm talking about, and I know Stephen knows what he's talking about, and I think it is getting worse and worse and worse. And so with this, the growing hostility towards, quote, conversion therapy, and now all the crud out there about that, you know, and the very fact that Stephen can't even show a movie without being picketed, not to mention, of course, Peter LaBarbera from Americans for Truth about homosexuality and all the stuff that he's done, and then the demise of Exodus International and the false teaching that coming through there and all that. This is a mess most people don't know about, and we need to wake people up, right?
That's right.
All right. So there's my credentials, just so but I just say, just because, you know what you're talking about. I know you know what you're talking about, and I want people to know, if they don't know me, I know what I'm talking about, just so you know.
Yeah, and one of the latest things this last week I endured a little bit. It's like, well, you don't have all the letters behind your name, mine talking about me. I was like, you're right, I don't. I just have 35 years of experience and 30 years specifically studying this for my own recovery, but also for the hundreds, if not thousands of people that I personally helped. In our ministry, we have records with over 1,200 people that have come through our ministry, and we just recently did a survey that showed the results of that. And so I do know a little bit about this, having spent 30 years of my life devoted to helping people overcome all things of sexual sin and brokenness, specifically the area of homosexuality. But I run a new man's group right now where I've got 12 men that come every Monday night. And so we deal with all kinds of pornography addiction, fetish behavior, and fantasy and brokenness. And people are getting set free in our ministry. And there's many churches that also offer this. And so now we have this onslaught that the idea, and they're actually using these words, Stacy, they're saying that giving the gospel and actually praying with people and helping pastor people into a loving relationship with Christ is now called conversion therapy. And it's a ruse that started a couple of years back. Unfortunately, you see people like Randy Thomas and some of these former Exodus people that gathered with the SPLC to brainstorm on how to combat this while they were in the process of suing Jonah, which they were able to bring down this Jewish offering in helping people come out of homosexuality called Jonah. And they attacked that ministry based upon the idea of consumer fraud. So in other words, they were saying this organization was offering a promise of absolute deliverance from any kind of feelings or temptation. And because they weren't able to overcome their lust and desires, that this was consumer fraud. But in actuality, they weren't even allowed to present the full case. Jonah never promised that. And neither do any of our ministries or churches promise that a person will never be tempted or have a struggle. Matter of fact, freedom is never the absence of a struggle. You can almost guarantee that you will have struggle, that you will have temptation. But freedom is a life being able to be consecrated to Jesus Christ as Lord and not be dominated by sin. And these people cannot stand that. The results of my book, the survey, showed that 70% of the people that came through our ministry have found lasting freedom. And we have documentaries now. We have David Call Foster and Carl Sutton with Pure Passion have produced these amazing documentaries. And so what we've been doing is we've been doing little seminars and the screenings of these documentaries. And now these people are coming unhinged and they're screaming conversion therapy, and they need to be taken down, and literally having these women, they call themselves mama bears, and they want to come and they have vowed that ministries like ours need to be taken down. And they're coming out of their own hurt. I understand where they're coming from. They're broken. They have children in homosexuality, and they want to make themselves feel good about, honoring and encouraging and coming beside their children in their homosexuality. But actually, they're not loving their kids by embracing this lifestyle. I mean, when you look at the CDC statistics on the lifestyle of homosexuality, it conclusively shows that this is a terrible lifestyle. It's a destructive lifestyle. It's a lifestyle full of disease, and the median life expectancy of a male homosexual is half of that of somebody that it would be living a normal, what we would call heterosexual life. So there's nothing loving about it. But yes, we are coming under real attack. And in the news, there was a church in outside of Detroit called Metro City Church. And this same group of people in Oklahoma City, they call themselves the Free Hugs Group, the Mama Bears. This lady that is the head of it, her name is Sarah Cunningham, and she's proudly in the news communicating that she's glad that this church was protested with 9,000 contacts. She was able to make, I think it said, almost 2,000 contacts to get people riled up against this church. Well, what ended up happening under what they call a peaceful protest is that this church was threatened, and the lives of the staff, the pastor, his family, these LGBT people were talking about burning the church down, or burning the pastor's house down and killing the pastor. This is how radical it's become. there's nothing tolerant or kind or loving about what they're proposing in these peaceful protests when they call the documentary dangerous and the people around it hateful and dangerous and harmful. Well, that's inciting people. It's inciting people to violence. And so that's what we're up against.
Yeah,
that's what we're dealing with.
You know what the irony of all that is, though? And the irony is that if you know anything about Soul Force, you know, the irony is that Soul Force is one of these ones that talks about nonviolence and all this other stuff. But then you have more on the radical fringe, like ACT UP, who you know, whenever they protest, they get like fire torches, and they yell with their bullhorns and stuff like that. So
right.
It's getting more demonic. And I know people don't like to hear that word, but frankly, that's the truth. If you look at the spirit behind, you know, the opposite of somebody filled with the Holy Spirit is somebody filled with an unclean spirit.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
You can quote me on that.
Having lived it, and having gone through it and gone through the process of freedom, you actually know that the Bible is true when Ephesians 6 verse 12 says that our wrestle's not against flesh and blood. Ironically, the very thing that if you go to Amazon and you look at one of the people, I won't even ingratiate her name, but she's written this long scathing review of my book, and she's almost actually gleefully making fun of the fact that I expose that a lot of the problem is demonic activity. And not all of it. I mean, we know that behind homosexuality and any kind of sexual addiction, there's brokenness of life. There's a history of torment and trauma almost with every single one of these people. But they're gleefully talking about how weird and bizarre that is. And yet I've never actually known anybody that has ever really walked in lasting freedom that did not believe the Bible and that there's a spiritual demonic warfare, an element of this that we are contending with, and that is actually a force behind any kind of a stronghold of sin in someone's life that they can't get free of. We are dealing with darkness. It's called evil.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and the role of the devil and his demons is legion, no pun intended. Number one, he's the accuser of the brethren. He goes before the Father both day and night accusing his followers. That's Revelation 12:10. Okay. I believe, and I share this all the time, that, you know, the devil, you know, he comes to kill, steal, and destroy, and he targets humans. That would be us people. Hello. Because we're the only creation that God made in his image, and we're the image bearers of who he is. So what better person, you know, what better part of creation to target than humans, right? You know, so it's not a joke. And you know what I think is interesting is that, you know, as the days get darker here in America, and they are, you know, the persecution is coming to the church here in America. It's coming. It's already here in many ways. Because, you know, I've talked to lots of people and, you know, as you know, especially when it's this topic, who would have thought in a gazillion years? And I actually shared this with one of my friends in grad school who is actually pro-gay, right? Cause she doesn't understand the agenda. But you know, let's just love everybody or whatever. And so I said to her, just for sake of argument, I said, what if in 20 or 40 years, all of a sudden pedophilia is normalized? I mean, would you think it's okay because everybody else normalized it? Well, that will never happen. I said, really? Because 40, 50 years ago, homosexuality, everybody thought was an abomination, unnatural.
That's right.
You
and
know?
They said what we are seeing today would never happen. And yet I got somebody posted something that was going on in Austin just last week, where there was these drag queens that are actually teaching children. And we're talking elementary school level children how to be drag queens and how to dance provocatively, so much so that if anybody saw what was going on, they would, I don't know how you could not call it child abuse. This is what's going on.
Yeah.
And where does this lead when you have children and you're teaching them to actually wear things and to dance provocatively? Of course, this is leading towards the exploitation of children in sexual abuse.
That's right.
This is what's going on.
That's right. Well, I want to take a break here just for a minute. So I want to thank all of you guys who are tuned in on Facebook and also on Periscope. And if anybody's on YouTube, thank you for tuning in. I appreciate you guys sharing this out. This is a very important topic. I'm just going to be honest with you. A lot of Christian media won't touch it. Why? Because it's too controversial, or they bought into the progressive liberalism that is pro-gay and not cool, just so you know, not biblical. So I really do appreciate you sharing it out, because the alternative media, even here on Facebook and Periscope and Twitter and YouTube, they're censoring us. They are. I look at my tweets and how many people see. I have like 12,000 followers on Twitter. It will show 10 people saw my tweet. I'm like, really? Just saying. So this month, though, my sponsor, Ariel Ministries, has a actually very cool Bible study. It's called Demonology. And if you go to my website, BibleNewsRadio.com/resources, or just go there and click the resources tab, right there on that page, you'll see the PDF for the free giveaway. This is a 42-page in-depth Bible study on demonology. All you got to do is click that link and download it. There's no email you have to give, nothing. Just download it. You can buy it from Ariel for $3, but they're giving it to us this month for all of our listeners. So I would encourage you to get it. Also, don't forget, you can buy anything at Ariel and use the coupon code Bible News, and you can save 20% on anything. Same resource page. There's a whole bunch of Messianic Jewish teachings from our friend Model Balston, who's a Messianic Bible teacher. Excellent stuff. And you know, Ariel needs to be praised and supported for sponsoring us, because they have guts, just so you know. And you know what's really cool is I'm part Jewish, and I didn't even know it when they started sponsoring me. That's so cool. Anyway, the other thing I want to tell you about is on that same page, there is an icon for Bullhorn, which is a new mobile app. I'm partnering with Bullhorn right now in helping them to develop this app. This is so cool, you guys. And all of you guys who are activists, Stephen, you got to pay attention to this. This app here is owned by Free Conference Call, which is owned by Christian Believers. They just unveiled this app at NRB, the National Religious Broadcasters. It's in beta right now, but we're helping them to, you know, work out the bugs, and I'm telling them what I want this app to be. But here's the cool thing. They are targeting specific groups: prayer leaders, ministry leaders, salespeople, like with Mary Kay, Avon, you know, people who hold up teams for conference calls and stuff, and other things like that. And they have promised me they will never, ever, ever censor our messages. They want people to connect on this app, and it's completely free. And so you all need to go down there, download Bullhorn, and follow me, Bible News Radio, on it, because every single day I'm given a 10-minute, or at least, message. Like today I talked about Stephen and him coming on the show. Yesterday I talked about Oprah Winfrey and how she thinks as a Christian you don't need to tell anybody, but you know. Anyway, you can hear some of my commentary on there, and do download it, because you know what? With the increasing hostility on regular social media, this alternative stuff, we're going to need it in order to communicate, especially if we have ministries in different places, and it's free. So, you know, support a Christian company and support us by just following us, and I'll follow you back. And last but not least, I want to thank all of our pillars of the community, who are the people who donate to us once a month. We suggest $25 a month. It helps us budget. But if you can't give that and you still want to be a pillar of our community, then by all means, just go to PayPal, set up a reoccurring payment, tell me, hey, I want to be a pillar of the community. I'll put you into my private Facebook group for our supporters. You know, I try to do other extra stuff for our pillars too. And if you don't want to be a pillar because you can't afford to, then you just want to donate to us, then any donation is acceptable to me. Just so you know. And I appreciate it. By the way, I will be talking about some other things coming up soon that maybe you guys can sponsor us with a conference coming up in a little while. But that is it for our sponsorship segment of the show. And again, I want to welcome back Stephen Black, who is the executive director of First Stone Ministries and also the chairman of Restored Hope Network. And we actually got to see at each other at NRB. I don't know, Randall, if you have the picture there.
Yes, I do.
You can put up. Okay, so we were at the National Religious Broadcasters Convention. We met up with Stephen and Ann, and there was another guy, I forgot his name. But this was so cool, and I want to show this picture because I want you to tell everybody about the Restored Hope Network, which I am so proud to have stood in front of that name and be associated with, just so you know.
Yeah, this is myself and you and Ann Paul, who is our executive director, and this is Gary Ingram, who is also a ministry director and on the board of Restored Hope Network. And Gary runs Love and Truth Network, which is also a teaching network of helping people overcome homosexuality. So you can see in the background there, it says, Jesus Christ still transformed the lives of those who turn to him from sexual and relational sin. And the reason why it's the Restored Hope Network is because most of the ministries that were the mature ministries from Exodus, the Exodus debacle, which was their former leader and chair, started teaching antinomianism that led to the segue of gay Christianity. There's a restoration in the need for people to hear that there is hope, that there's hope for transformation, and that most of the ministries that were doing the frontline work had never gone away. They've always been doing the ministry, like Desert Streams and the ministry, several ministries. I don't know why I'm drawing a blank. The Nate Ole's ministry in Outpost in the St. Paul area, Regen Ministries in D.C. I mean, just a bunch of ministries throughout the United States that are still offering hope. Portland Fellowship in Portland, Oregon. These ministries never went away. They've always been doing the frontline work and have been around, most of these ministries, for decades. So we wanted to actually call it Restored Hope to give hope to the culture that there's still people that find lasting freedom from all forms of sexual sin, especially homosexuality.
Amen. Yeah, see what the devil meant for, destruction. God always turns around for good for those who love him.
That's right. I think honestly, the Restored Hope Network had to happen. I remember when Alan Chambers in June of 2013 had announced that they were closing Exodus. I was in my hotel room. We were actually having our second conference for the Restored Hope Network here in Oklahoma City. And I remember hearing new wineskin. And I felt like the Lord was saying to me that a new wineskin had to be made to offer a good, sound, biblical, forward-moving, sound doctrinal offering for this next generation.
Yeah. And the key word there is biblical.
Right.
Not revisionist biblical history, but actual biblical, And that's actually one of the things, I want you to talk about too is, there is an increasing hostility towards pastoral counseling, which is basically what you do. And can you update us on I know there's also some bills that are trying to outlaw therapists from actually helping people who want help. And this is where we need to be very clear. This is for people who want help. This isn't the way these activists like to depict us as if, oh, well, you're hunting down people who are, they're happy in their, orientation or whatever, and you're forcing them to come in, and you're giving them electric shock therapy, and you're doing all this other stuff against their will, has nothing to do with reality. It's a fantasy. In fact, some of the leading gay activists out there, even some of the leading gay activists don't believe the gay activists that are putting that stuff out there. I mean, it's so ridiculous. That's what drives me crazy, is because there's so much propaganda out there that it's insane. But this is for people who are seeking out help, like me. Okay, I'm just going to testify. I was sexually abused most of my childhood. I struggled with same-sex attraction when I was a teenager. And when I was just over a teenager, in my very early 20s, I had an encounter with an older woman who had the exact same background as me, by the way. And she seduced me, right? We kissed. That was all we did. And it freaked me out, honestly, because I was a Christian. And I was like, this is not compatible with my faith. So I went to a therapist by myself as an adult, went there, and I said, she's like, what's your problem? And I said, why are you here? I said, I think I'm gay. And she's like, oh, let's talk about your background. And within 3 weeks, I understood why those feelings and those wires were crossed. And literally, God changed my life. And I was like, all right. And I know maybe that's not the norm for people, but I spent years in therapy learning appropriate boundaries, learning how to attach to women in a healthy way, because my mom was very abusive and rejecting. And so, I mean, I had the classic background, okay, for that same-sex attraction feeling. So I get it from an experiential point and all that. But I can honestly tell you, too, I'm the same way. I don't struggle with that at all. As you know, bareface is the love of my life. I've been married almost 26 years, you know? So anyway, but talk about though the creep against the, you know, people getting help for their kids or getting help themselves, how they're trying to stop that.
Yeah, it's really actually quite diabolical and really sad. We have now this war against the idea that you can find lasting freedom in different 9 states now have passed laws against therapy or counseling for minors. And so in these states, what they would say is anybody trying to tell a youth like yourself or myself that would be going to a counselor, coming to an understanding now in puberty, I'm feeling attracted to my same sex. And by the way, I was molested when I was a kid. Can somebody help me? Now in these 9 states, they're actually saying gay is the only way for those kids. And I think that's tragic. It's really sad. And now in the state of California, they're actually proposing 2 bills. I have them here. It's 2 bills that are going through the House and the Senate that are going, they want to make any kind of offering of hope for the change of orientation. And I read the beginning of the bill. It says anybody that would somehow communicate that homosexuality is wrong, or LGBT, any kind of LGBT, and that they need to change, or if somebody wanted change, you cannot offer it and offer any kind of hope under what would be classic counseling or therapy. And now that would also include pastoral care in the state of California. And if there's any form of finances that are exchanged, that would come under the idea that this is somehow consumer fraud. And the numbers are AB 2943 and then Senate Bill 1172 in California. And if you're in California, people need to call their senators and representatives and say, this is unacceptable that someone who has a different worldview, or somebody who is actually struggling with their identity because they were molested as children and think they're gay, can no longer get help. This is tragic. And so this would be for anybody in any way, any reason, under any kind of therapy or counseling. And I think that's a tragic thing that's happening. I believe with all my heart that the states that have passed these laws so that children under the age of 18 cannot get help is akin to child abuse. I know I would have so wanted help. And when I told my parents, they didn't know what to do. They didn't know what to think. And they didn't actually offer counseling or therapy. They wanted me to go talk to the priest. Well, guess who the priest was? My parents' parish priest was a homosexual. And so his advice was, come to Mass more. It's all the more reason. And I'm like going, this is tragic. And so that was my situation. So I never even knew that there was help. And how many people out there know that there's help and now they can't get help? It's terrible, Stacy, what's happening.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. I'd like to smack
the church needs to stand up and say enough is enough. Matter of fact, this Sarah Cunningham and these other LGBT activists, they're actually saying, this is a quote from them, agreeing to disagree is no longer acceptable. Agreeing to disagree is no more. No more. From now on, you must agree with us. And you must, in the church, they're talking to the church, you must accept LGBTQ people as normative. This is what they're saying.
Oh,
that's disturbing.
Well,
because that goes against everything that a true Bible believer would believe concerning sexual morality.
Right. And when the Supreme Court of the United States of America overturned the will of the people by saying homosexuals could marry in this country, if that was the real goal of the activist community, this whole thing would be done. The truth is, it's not. You know that. I know that. The ultimate truth is they want to silence the gospel. And if you guys don't think that targeting pastoral counseling now in ministries like this and different churches where they do this isn't their ultimate goal to target the actual gospel of Christ, then wake up, because that's exactly what it's about. And, it's funny because part of the propaganda in the counseling field, and I know this because I'm in the field, is that, and I heard this when I was at the training, where they were trying to gayify me as a gay therapist, affirming therapist in the school, was that if you have a child that's gay, then you only have two choices. Your choices are that your child is gay and he lives, or your child is not gay because you're forcing him not to be gay and he's going to commit suicide. There's no other option, which is completely asinine, people, just so you know. I mean, that is so asinine. It has nothing to do with reality. It's like, I just want to smack some of these people. But anyway, to answer Sylvia Sue Lynn's question, what those bills were was AB 2943, right? And
yeah, I did. I actually scrolled away from it.
I wrote it down.
The other one was Senate Bill 1172 or 73.
I wrote 72. SB 1172 is the other one I read. But so here's the thing. All right. This one I know. Jesus rocks, man. Just so you know. And greater is he who is in us as believers than he who is in the world. He's already overcome. We've already overcome by the blood of the Lamb. And if you don't like that, too bad. Build a bridge and get over it. Okay?
Yeah. I have it. It's AB 2943.
Okay, that's what I have.
And Senate Bill SB 1172 in California.
Yeah. Well, I mean all that stuff in love, of course. I speak the truth in love. But I get irritated because this is what really irks me, is that people go, oh, I'm so happy that you're standing up for this. And I'm like, thank you. So here's a challenge to you, okay? And I'm just going to be bold in my thing. First of all, here's my challenge. If you really like what I'm doing by helping, people like Stephen and Restored Hope Network, first of all, I want to encourage you to go donate to these people because trust me, they need the money. Second of all, I want you to donate to me, because do you think that I get paid like from manna from heaven falling for all the stuff that I do? No. You know, we need money. And instead of putting your money towards the ungodly, you know, crap out there that you go and you see at the movies and stuff, donate money to us. I mean, seriously.
The whole movie industry, and now they've got the Love, Simon, and the movie where the woman's falling in love with some kind of weird sea creature, and it's, I mean, you know, and then the other movie that was awarded different awards, and it's a young teenage guy propositioning his instructor, and they have a homosexual relationship, and it would be called, you know, statutory rape.
I'm not laughing because it's funny, but I'm laughing because, you know, after the ball, the dudes that wrote that book, they laid out the playbook on how to, you know, flood the nation with this immorality. And sure enough,
exactly,
they did. And, you know, I just have to say, you know, just because you're in the world, you know, we're in the world, but we're not of the world. Okay. I mean, get in your Bible, people, and become bold in your faith. And the way you're going to do it is by hanging out with Jesus. How do you think the disciples spread the gospel? It wasn't because they were watching TV or they were hanging out with their local witchcraft people. It was because they were they were reading the Torah, they were walking with the living Torah, and they were actually, you know, watching what the master did. And you know what? I'm telling you, I had on Kim Davis, right? Kim Davis, you know Kim Davis. I interviewed her at NRB. We just played her interview last night. And, you know, here's a woman, a county clerk in Kentucky, who, when the Supreme Court overturned the will of the people, she said, no, I'm not going to, you know, sign gay marriages under God's authority. And she went to jail for it in America. Okay? So people need to wake up. Me and Randall often joke, we'll see you in prison. Just because.
It's, you know, we, you know, 10 years ago, we said, you know, there may be a day coming. It's not a laughing matter anymore.
No, it's not.
The reality is, I mean, that, you know, what's happening in California. You know, and then you hear about the HRC pouring in $8 million into Texas into the school curriculum. I heard about this in the Teens for Truth conference in October, so that they can turn the elementary school mind and within 10 to 20 years turn Texas from red to purple to blue. And so they're strategizing.
Oh yeah, they are.
And you're right. It's not stopping with gay marriage.
Well, and
they want a prolific mindset of homosexuality to permeate our culture.
Yeah, and they did this in California, though, too. They targeted Orange County, California. I know, because I was there at the school boards when they did it. And they did it. They successfully did it. But they didn't do it. And this is what everybody needs to understand. They did not do it because the citizens wanted it. They did it through legal action. And that's why this is difficult. Because if you can if you set precedent from some cockamamie lawsuit by doing this, then they're, oh, wait, well, in this case, let's pull that up. And, oh, okay, now we're going to build another case. These people aren't dumb people, just so you know. And you shouldn't be either. That's why we're here at Bible News Radio, trying to help get the word out, even though we are a little teeny-weeny venue compared to others. But we're, you know, on the devil's radar. So so we need to close the show up, though. So, Stephen, give a yeah, I know. Give a final plug for your ministry and stuff. And
yeah, I would. Well, I'd like to give a plug also again for the book Freedom Realized, and it has its own website, freedomrealized.org. And it's a nice book. It tells my story. But the thing it shows is that conclusively people find lasting freedom. And then I direct the ministry called First Stone, and First Stone Ministries, and that the website is firststone.org. And First Stone is a part of a network of ministries throughout the United States that helps people find freedom, and that's Restored Hope Network. And the website is restoredhopenetwork.org.
Amen. All right. Well, everybody, you heard it. You heard the testimony of salvation and deliverance from Jesus through Stephen. You heard the underlying belly of the gay activist movement. And you also heard the truth about the gospel. Jesus can set anybody free if they want to be. And you know what? The devil, he's a roaring lion seeking who he's trying to figure out who he can eat. And
true.
What I want you to know, people, is I would prefer you don't be lion food, just so you know.
Yeah.
So, get filled up on the bread of life and the living water, get some boldness, and hang out with people who are of like mind, and, and then come back tomorrow for Bible News Radio for Free for All Friday. Tomorrow is Friday, right? No, tomorrow's Thursday. Do I have a guest tomorrow? Wait, hold on. Let me look at my calendar. Let's see. Oh, yes, I do. I actually have a guest tomorrow. So tomorrow night, my friend Dr. Lisa Solcente, who is a nutritionist and actually who became a Christian in part watching our show. She's growing in her faith, coming out of the Catholic Church. She's going to talk to us about Christians and our health. And, she's from New Jersey. She's very outspoken. And I have to tell you, she's very outspoken about this topic as well. And totally cool with our stance on it. So anyways, tune in tomorrow night at 7 o'clock and we'll talk to Dr. Lisa Solcente about our health. All right. So everybody be bold. I dare you. Stand up and go with God because he loves you.